Do you know what is great right now? Professional wrestling companies from the world over coming together to form some kind of supergroup. And do you know what else is great? Puns. Which is why I just want to show this. It's a pizza, and it says, "You want a pizza, me?" It's a pun. Anyway, let's not worry about that. That had nothing to do with anything. My name is Simon Miller. Welcome to WhatCulture Wrestling. And we have had yet another wrestling show, and you can call it Impact Wrestling, but my flipping word, it had New Japan performers on it. I am loving the universe that has been created. But also, we need to take the finger of power, and we need to give the good bits an up and the bad bits a down. Let's do it right now. See, like I say, the wrestling world is so exciting right now, because do you know how the end of this week's Impact... Like I say, the wrestling world is so exciting right now, because do you know how the end of this week's Impact opening video ended? With the logo of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Because of course, on this episode of Impact, we were going to get Finjuice, the greatest tag team name in the history of anything. We also then went straight into our X Division title match between Josh Alexander and TJP, because of course Josh Alexander had secured that shot at No Surrender, which only went down about 3 days ago. And at first I was like, shouldn't we build this up a little bit longer? Then I was like, no. Who the hell knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Maybe planet Earth will explode. Either way, up. This was a proper old and new hybrid professional wrestling match as well, because even though both guys were going after body parts, they also utilized aerial maneuvers, which is what TJP used to get the upper hand. Josh Alexander didn't like that, so he just punched him right in the face. Josh was also going to give him the J Driller from the top rope at one point, and thankfully TJP escaped, and then he went for the Mamba Splash, and Alexander reversed that into an ankle lock. Just going to keep this nice and simple. It was very fun. This must have scared the champion too, because he went from that right into a Mamba Splash. At this time he did hit. He got the 1, 2, 3. And I tell you what I enjoyed the most about this. It was a clean finish in a championship match. And was I a little bit annoyed? Yes, because I was rooting for Josh Alexander. I think he's been on fire recently. But I don't think any less of him. The better man simply won. It's like when you watch real sports, when your team doesn't get the W, you're like, nuts, let's get them next time. I'm also intrigued now to see what we are going to do for both guys, because we kind of came up with other X Division contenders later on. But either way, I enjoyed this, and that's the only reason I watch professional wrestling. Tommy Dreamer was then proving he doesn't care about age, because he was interviewed in the back and he said he didn't appreciate Moose beating him up at No Surrender, so he has now challenged him to an old school's rules match in tonight's main event. I was like, Tommy Dreamer, you mad? Moose crazy? He gonna kill you. Backstage we also saw Brian Myers paying Hernandez all the money that he's owed him, because of course he paid him off to beat up Matt Cardona, when of all the people, Fala Bar went up to Hernandez and I'm pretty sure convinced him to go and join him in that stupid casino. Doesn't Hernandez know it was Fala Bar that stole the cash from him to begin with? And as ever, this cash, it is the most consistent and longevity-fueled storyline ever. Oh, stand it. It was then back to focusing on the X Division, because our next 4 guys were some of the losers who had been in that triple threat gauntlet thing at No Surrender. So we had Davari versus Suicide versus Trey Miguel versus Willie Mack. And look, it wasn't the best thing you're ever going to see in your life, but I was very, very happy with the results. Somebody kept being taken out of the match early on, so instead of it being a 4-way, it was mostly a triple threat match, maybe to call back to the stipulation we had at the pay-per-view. And I really would like to know what Davari and Suicide's work schedule is. I don't know why I care about that, but sometimes they're here and sometimes they go away, and I kind of felt like they were moving themselves into an X Division championship shot. If they had won, that is. But of course these 2 schmoes lost. Because I presumed that we were going to have to give it to Trey Miguel, because ever since he returned to the company, we have been giving him somewhat of a push. I was exactly right. He hit the Meteora onto Davari. Davari then went, maybe I'll come back in the next 7 weeks, I'll think about it. And Trey Miguel is your winner. Of course, afterwards he also bumped into Sami Callihan backstage, who basically went, Trey Miguel, you absolutely suck. And I can't figure out whether Sami wants to team with him, kind of manipulate him and get him his head, or he just wants to beat the shiz out of him. Maybe it's the point, and soon we'll find out. I think Ace Austin then got screwed, because he was talking to Scott D'Amore in the back, and he was like, look, brah, I won that X Division Cup thingamajig, the Super X Cup, and surely that means I should now get a shot at the X Division champion. I was like, yeah, that pretty much sounds fair. But instead, Davari, who'd also been chatting to TJP, so what's all that about, said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to have like a 6-man tag team match next week, and then the winner of that will go into a triple threat match, and the winner of that will fight TJP for the X Division Championship. Then my brain fell out of my head because that was a lot of information. But even Austin was like, why do I have to keep jumping through all these hoops all of the time? I kind of agreed with him. I don't know what that says about me. I mean, it does feel like he deserves something. Right now, all he's got is a cup. I'm also truly baffled by all this Brian Myers and Matt Cardona stuff. Like, it's not bad when they get to the wrestling, but the storyline, I just feel like it fell out of a magic hat. Here, for example, Hernandez was trying to take out Matt because Brian Myers had paid him all this money. And even though Brian Myers caused a distraction, which allowed Hernandez to basically hit Matt Cardona right in the balls, Matt Cardona still hit the radio silence and won. I was kind of staring at it going, man, I don't understand what direction this is going in. And Impact is also selling this, like when they're in the ring, they're not friends. When they're out the ring, they are friends. But what happened to the budding relationship between Matt Cardona and Josh Alexander? I thought Eddie Edwards was pissed off with all this and he did pop up afterwards. But yeah, it just has all come from nowhere and I don't really get why. Down. But Eddie did finally arrive to beat up Hernandez when Brian Myers and him were going to beat up Matt Cardona. And then poor Brian Myers accidentally got poked in the eye once again. I mean, eventually he's going to come out here and he's going to be one giant eye patch and he's not going to be able to see a thing. Like Rey Mysterio. It was our weekly AEW commercial next, and of course it's Valentine's Day, so there was a balloon heart there. And while Tony Khan didn't receive much, he did give, including a big charitable donation to Impact Wrestling, because otherwise they're gonna die. He also promoted the fact that the Forbidden Door is now open and you never know who's gonna turn up on what show. And he even did an interview recently and said, hey, if WWE want to get involved, they absolutely can. And don't get me wrong, that's never going to happen. But just hear the words come out of someone's mouth makes me a happy pup. It also does seem like the relationship between Havoc and Nevaeh is on the rocks, because they were backstage here having a bit of tete-for-tete before Dashwood and Caleb with a K saw this and thought, we can just wind them up, and they started to prod the bear. It did work though, and if I was going to guess, I think we're actually going to get a feud between Havoc and Nevaeh. Actually, I think that's what Impact should do. The tag team stuff has run its course. Give me this. Finjuice were then on Impact, and it just made me pleased, because if you had asked me this a few weeks ago, I wouldn't have believed it. They were also fighting Reno Scum, who I haven't seen on Impact for around about 900 years, but I guess somebody's got to lose to them. Either way, it's getting up. This wasn't a squash match either, as we did give Luster and Thornstone a little bit of offense, but come on now. Out of all the matches we've had in 2021, this was the easiest to call. Do you think New Japan are going to say, hey, yeah, take our tag team and just have them lose? Of course they're not, and they whooped their ass. This came after Finlay hit a superplex and Juice Robinson hit that big splash on the top, and they got the 1, 2, 3, and I was sat there going, man, let's not wait around like we didn't with Josh Alexander. Let's just get to Finjuice taking on the Good Brothers for the tag team championships, because that's what everybody wants. And then all my dreams came true. Because just like that, Gallows and Anderson were out here on the microphone going, you guys suck, you guys are rubbish, we hate you, you should go back to Japan. And don't forget, when we were there last time, you were our young boys. Juice then fired back like, hey man, that was 2015 and we're a brand new group. And then I think challenged them to a drinking contest. And knowing Impact Wrestling, that's probably a skit they'll do next week. But I can't wait to see this match. Then Rohit Raju, he is not a smart cookie. Because he was in the back here talking to Mahabali Shera and basically saying, you ruined my life, you ruined my X Division title shot, so now I'm going to blame you. And I was like, dude, he's the size of the house, shut up. It got so bad that he actually pushed Rohit into James Storm, and James Storm didn't like that, so he started firing fisticuffs off. And then him and Shera were staring at each other before Chris Sabin had to calm everyone down. But there you go, there's a future tag team match. Although how the Desi Hit Squad are going to be able to get along, I don't know. Because Rohit Raju is such a little, he's like a fly that keeps buzzing in your face. But I do like him, he just gets better with age. This then all led into Johnny Swinger inviting Sabin and Storm into that bizarre casino he's got going on. And as usual, it just goes right over my bald head. I don't understand the point. There was some weird comedy with Fowler Bar and Alicia Edwards, who don't forget a few weeks ago was terrified about her husband's safety. You tell me, please, in the comments, tell me, but down. Following this, we did have Nevaeh versus Dashwood, given everything that happened earlier, and very interestingly, Havoc was nowhere to be seen, and if she had accompanied her friend down to the ring, maybe she wouldn't have lost. up. And this isn't a match you're ever going to write home about, but I just love the fact we have a simple story. Nevaeh was trying to beat Dashwood here, but she just wasn't able to get the 1-2-3. So then she got frustrated, and her frustration led to her making mistakes. She got kicked right in the skull, and she did lose. Dashwood got a very rare victory. Nevaeh also looked a bit broken after this, like, oh man, what am I going to do now? And this is all you need to do. Just plant those seeds. Eventually those two will implode. They will have that match, and everybody can just enjoy it for what it is. We then had this nuts video courtesy of Violent by Design. I mean, if we hadn't gone Far Cry before, now we were going 100% Far Cry. But fair play all round. This was really well produced. It was mostly Cody Deaner talking to Jake something, going, well, you may have beaten me at the pay-per-view, but you've lost the war, you've lost the battle, I'm gonna murder your ass, to the point that we will have a tables match next week, and if I can't defeat you, I'm gonna understand the consequences. And the consequences must be quite bad, because Eric Young was in the corner just like, yeah, with blood coming off his teeth. I think he's going to eat him. I was also a bit like, man, if you could fall into this kind of trouble, maybe don't just do the match. But Violent by Design are a very interesting faction. Even if I don't understand their motivations at all, they just talk a lot of biblical speak. Susan then wanted a match with Jazz. I'm going to guess that ties into the pay-per-view because Jazz did whip Susan's ass. So her and Deonna Purrazzo and Kimberly all went to Scott D'Amore and said, this is what we want. But as ever, when they do that, they never actually get what they want. Instead, our would-be GM said, no, here's what we're going to do instead. Susan is going to team up with Kimberly, and you two are going to take on Jordynne Grace and Jazz, and the winner of that will then slowly make their way to fight for the Knockout Women's Championship. Now, how the hell that works, I do not know, and surely if they do that, they should challenge for the Women's Tag Team Championships, but we'll see. Poor Deonna Purrazzo, though, she never gets what she wants. It was then straight into our main event and our old school rules match, and Tommy Dreamer, what did I tell you? What were you trying to achieve? I know you were upset with Moose, but this is Moose, the most protected man in all of Impact Wrestling. He got absolutely destroyed. But honestly, Tommy even barely was able to look at Moose. He was having his ass handed to him so badly. And even the commentary team will go, why has Tom done this? Why has he done this? Moose is dangerous enough without a weapon, but now we put weapons in his hands, so he was just swinging everything he could get his hands on. Now, Dreamer was able to get a few shots in on his own and even push Moose through a table, but that was the equivalent of blowing at a wasp. You've achieved nothing. Instead, Moose just beat Dreamer senseless before he hit the lights out to get the 1-2-3, and when all was said and done, he took that TNA championship and he held it above his head, but you could see it in his eyes. He's gunning for the one and only Rich Swann and the belt that he holds. And you've got to guess as well that when that match does happen, Moose is going to win, because you don't want to beat him now. He's got all the momentum in the world, and as I always say, fair play to Impact. They have turned him into a main event player. I completely believe it, right down to his entrance when he stood there and all the lights are going crazy. Just bravo all round. And so yeah, mostly given the fact they were coming off a pretty damn decent pay-per-view with No Surrender, Impact did an alright job in carrying that on, and the highlight obviously was Finjuice. Who the hell knows who's going to be here next week? Maybe it's Okada. I mean, I doubt it, but it actually could happen. Either way, show overall, getting up. Now don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of Impact. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com. You can read about wrestling news. You can follow WhatCulture on social media. Search for WhatCulture. And you can watch more videos on the channel. Look at them swimming around my head. My name is Simon for WhatCulture. Make sure you have a lovely day. And if you'd like to watch me in other ups and downs videos, you can. It would be a pleasure to see your face. See ya.